Welcome to Midnight Sleep Scientist, a quiet place where the universe lowers its voice and we wander, unhurried, through the softest corners of cosmology. If you'd like, you can rest your attention on something simple. The cool side of the pillow, the way your shoulders might slide down a half inch when you remember you don't have to hold the day anymore. Out beyond the window, night is gathering itself into a calm idea, a patient sky threaded with faint memories of light. Tonight, we're going to trace a path through the facts that soothe, the kind of truths that don't argue or insist, but simply glow with gentle certainty. We'll drift through time that behaves like a river, not a rule book, through distances that sound large, but feel oddly home-shaped when we move slowly enough. We'll visit the oldest light still whispering, the horizon that isn't a wall, the invisible scaffolding that keeps galaxies in graceful neighborhoods. We'll listen to the soft reason why the sky is dark and why that darkness is kind. We'll follow gravity's quiet curves, wander the cosmic web of filaments and fields, and arrive at a small sheltering thought. Limits can be peaceful, and wonder can be spacious enough to sleep inside. If you stir still awake when we return, you still welcome to share where you stir listening from tonight. A city window, a cabin, a couch, where the blanket knows your shape, but there sits nothing to do, nothing to remember, just this slow, starlit walk. And now we begin. Step into the night with us. Let the door hush closed behind the day. The air feels cooler against your cheeks, slightly damp perhaps, carrying the mineral scent of sidewalks or soil, a trace of leaves. Overhead, the sky is not a ceiling, but a calm ocean of velvet arranged with points of old fire. You look up, and something simple happens. Your eyes dilate, your breath lengthens, your attention settles into the largest room you know. We might say this plainly. Starlight takes time. It travels steadily and without hurry, from wherever it was born to where your eyes are now. That means the light arriving tonight is not quite news, it's memory. A star you notice near the horizon might be tens or hundreds of light years away. The message reaching you began before this week, before this year, maybe before you were born. The night is quietly full of postcards from the past, franked with time. There is comfort here. When we look up, we are never asked to react quickly. Everything is late, in the gentlest possible way. Even the nearest star beyond our sun is more than 4 years of light away. 4 years is the span of old friends visiting and leaving, and visiting again. It is the time it takes a new habit to feel like a second language. It is several winters, several springs. The sky's conversation runs on a slow schedule that invites the body to unclench. You can't chase light that already left. You can only receive it. If we listen more closely, we might hear a second truth. Softer still, distance and time are braided in the cosmos. Astronomers call it look-back time. The way an object's distance can be translated into how far back in its history we are seeing. But the translation is polite and imperfect, shaped by expansion and geometry. The numbers can grow large, millions, billions, and yet the feeling remains small, even intimate when you hold it like this. What touches your retina tonight is the past. Arriving on schedule, asking nothing but notice. Perhaps this is why ancient people made stories of the stars, not to control them but to companion them, to place the human span alongside the sky's patient memory. We still do it, in quieter ways, by naming a favorite constellation, by waiting for winter's familiar pattern to rise over the trees, by marking the return of a planet in the early evening. We say, "There you are again," and something inside us loosens. Continuity is a lullaby. Let your gaze settle on one star for a moment. It might waver as your eyes adjust. That tiny shimmer is the atmosphere negotiating with your view, moving the light slightly, like water over a pebble. The star remains what it is, steady, remote, generous, while what's between you and it performs the dance. There's a lesson there if we want one. Often what flickers is not the thing itself, but the medium we're seeing through. The day's concerns were like weather too, rising and falling, moving light around. The star has time. You have time. Now we might widen the frame. Imagine a delicate ladder of distances, the planetary neighborhood where radio signals slip between spacecraft and Earth in minutes or hours. The local stars whose messages cross years. The galaxies whose light leaves during the rise of early civilizations and arrives in our modern nights. And then the most distant beacons whose photons began their errand when the universe was young, when matter and light were still sorting out who would keep what shape. The night holds all these eras at once, layered like gentle sediment. It could sound overwhelming, but it can also be a kindly simplification. If the night is a time machine, it's one without buttons or blinking panels. You don't pilot it. You don't risk rushing anywhere. You simply look, and time arrives already softened by distance, already cooled into something your mind can cradle at bedtime. Light years become a lullaby count, a way of stepping steadily down into rest. 1 light year, 2, 10, hundreds. And then the number dissolves into the feeling of long ago, which is enough for tonight. Perhaps you're wondering what we really see. A star is not a tiny hole in a black curtain, it's a sun with weight and fire. The light carries clues, color smuggles temperature, lines in the spectrum whisper about elements, the brightness tells of distance and age, sometimes of companions. And yet, for our purposes, the fact can be gentle. What we see is what was. The present state of that star, right now, is elsewhere, untouchable to us, until the light that describes it has traveled the long road to our sky. There's relief in that. The universe maintains its privacy, and we are freed from trying to know everything all at once. If you like, imagine time itself as a river we are floating upon in the simplest boat, a smooth wooden skiff that doesn't leak, doesn't hurry. The river is wide, calm in the center, with quieter currents near the banks, where shadows of branches ripple. On certain nights, the stars are reflected on the water, and you can see the present and the past at once, the original lights overhead, and their echoed glimmer along the surface, stretched by the moving stream. You can trail your fingers and feel the coolness, the way water answers but doesn't cling. This is how starlight feels tonight, answering, not demanding. We might pause here and add a small, honest caveat, the sort science appreciates. Not everything in the sky sits still while it sends its message. Some stars brighten and dim. Some explode in rare, brilliant endings. Some orbit companions in slow spirals. Galaxies drift apart, carried by the expansion of space itself. Time is not only distance, it's also change. And yet the changes we glimpse are broadened by the journey light must take, blurred into a softness that is frankly perfect for bedtime. The universe does not serve breaking news at midnight unless we go looking for it with special instruments. To the naked eye, the sky is a museum of serene arrivals. There is another comfort. The speed of light is not a punishment for slowness. It is a promise of order. Because light travels how it travels, we can read the night like a quiet history. We can place ourselves gently along the timeline without needing to be precise. Our sun's light takes 8 minutes to reach us. A familiar star might be a few hundred years away, a span that could hold the life of a tree, a language shifting at its edges, the patient restoration of an old place. Farther galaxies, millions of years, enough time for mountains to rise and wear down again. The scale stretches, but the feeling stays simple. This light is faithful. It keeps its appointments. Listen too, to the body in this. The neck tilts back, muscles lengthen, breath lowers in the ribs. The eyes move slower, searching without urgency. Even your thoughts begin to align with longer wavelengths, fewer spikes, more swells. The story the sky tells is patient, and your nervous system, given a kindly story, tends to follow. There's a human parallel that might be helpful. Think of old letters, the kind written in ink, found in a drawer. Reading them, you are aware they were composed in a different now. The writer didn't know what you know. The events had not unfolded yet, and that's what makes the letters tender. You receive them with care, grace for the gaps. Starlight carries that same tenderness. It is a letter written when the universe was slightly different, addressed to whoever would be here to read it, and tonight that happens to be you. We could wander further and speak of the faint microwave afterglow from the earliest times, or the quiet arithmetic that helps us estimate distances, but those are chapters ahead. For now, let this first thought curl around you. Night is not empty. It is full of traveling evidence, arriving on time. You can trust it. Even when clouds gather, even when city lights blur the pattern, the messages continue to cross the dark at the speed they always have, like a heartbeat that neither rushes nor forgets. If a stray worry arrives, as stray worries do, try placing it beside a star you can pick out easily, perhaps a bright one you learned the name of once. Let the worry have a seat there, as if the star were a quiet bench. Remember that what you're looking at is already old, and yet it feels immediate. Your worry too is a message from an earlier you, still on its way to be understood. It may take time. That's okay. Time is what the night offers in abundance. You might notice the faintest breeze moving the leaves, a small temperature change on your face. Somewhere in the distance, a late car murmurs by, then fades. These are the gentle signposts of here and now, anchors that keep you from drifting too far upstream. You are in two times at once, present in your body, listening to quiet sounds, and present in the long arrivals of starlight. Both are real, both are allowed. Before we close the chapter, let's step once more into that wooden boat on the river of time. The current is easy, the banks drifting by at a pace that lets you notice small things. The outline of stones, the soft bell of a night bird in the reeds, a constellation reflected on the water in a trembling line. You could reach for the stars and only touch coolness, and still that is enough. The boat carries you. The river knows its way. The sky keeps sending its uncomplicated gifts. We'll carry this feeling with us into the next chapter, where we'll talk about the gentle boundary of what we can, in principle, see, a horizon that isn't a wall so much as a soft imagined shoreline of information. For tonight, as your eyes grow heavier, let the simplest truth linger. When you gaze into the dark, you are also looking into the past, and the past is perfectly content to arrive slowly. Let that be the rhythm you keep, unrushed, receptive, already halfway to sleep. Night again, the same sky, slightly rearranged by the turning earth, the same familiar coolness gathering along your skin. A quieter neighborhood, perhaps. A porch light across the way. Somewhere, a dog considers the dark and then decides to rest. You tilt your gaze upward, and the world seems to widen in a way that is both physical and kindly imagined, like a room whose walls were never really there. We might picture, just for a moment, a shoreline you cannot sail to, the kind drawn not by rock or wave, but by what can reach you in time. Astronomers call it a horizon, though there is no line to see. It is the edge of the observable universe, not a fence, not a wall, simply the farthest distance from which light has had the chance to arrive since the cosmos began. The image can settle in softly, a lantern in fog, and then others, receding into paler and paler halos, until the mist becomes all that is left to notice. This horizon is made of time as much as distance, and it changes as time changes. With every passing night, the bubble of what we can, in principle, witness grows a little, like a slow breath drawn by the universe itself. The old metaphors of raisin bread or stretching fabric are useful, yet tonight we might prefer something gentler, a field of fireflies at dusk, drifting apart in the tall grass, not because they are hurrying, but because the meadow is somehow becoming more meadow between them. The lights are not fleeing you. The space between simply, gradually unfolds. There's a curiosity here that can be held like a smooth stone, simple to touch, interesting to turn over, never sharp. The universe seems to have begun in a hot, dense state, and over what we count as billions of years, it has expanded and cooled. Because of that, the farthest light we could ever see today comes from regions that, when they set off those photons, were much closer than they are now. The number, if we say it at all, is just an outline. The radius of this observable bubble is on the order of tens of billions of light years. But the feeling we keep is humbler. Our vision has a reach, and that reach is enough to fill a lifetime of looking. It might seem strange that there is more universe beyond our seeing, more lanterns in the fog than will ever glow for us. But there is a deep comfort in this, the way a forest feels larger than the trail you walk, or an ocean wider than the cove you float in. We are made for neighborhoods. The mind, when given a boundless thing, often relaxes when it can consider a portion at a time. The observable universe offers exactly that kindness, a portion vast enough to humble us, bounded enough to hold us. If we listen carefully to the language of horizons, we'll hear two quiet notes. One is the particle horizon, the utmost so far of what has had time to reach us since the beginning. The other is the event horizon, the delicate line between what will ever reach us and what will not, even if we wait forever. You do not need the definitions to sleep well, only the sense that there are kinds of edges, one drawn by the past, one by the future. Both are made of light's patient speed, and space's gentle habit of becoming more space. Perhaps you've stood on a hill and watched weather roll in, rain visible miles away, marching in blue curtains across a valley. The rain that will reach you is not the rain you see falling right now in the distance. What will touch your skin is still forming elsewhere, downstream in time. The cosmic horizon is like that. What can influence you must have time to travel. What stands forever too far, those rain curtains that never move your way, belongs to a different story, real but untouching. Knowing this, we can let go of the weight of everything. Nobody, not even a galaxy, is asked to keep the whole sky. There's a human echo here, a friendly one. We all have horizons of attention and care. We can hold a certain number of people close, a certain number of tasks, a certain portion of the day's news. Beyond that, the fog of life thickens, and it becomes an act of kindness to acknowledge limits. The cosmos models this without apology. It says this is what can reach you by now, and that is what cannot. And then it adds softly, both are fine. You might be wondering how this changes with time, whether tomorrow night or 1,000 years from now, the same distant glow will still be visible. The answer is slow, and that slowness is merciful. As the universe expands, many faraway galaxies drift, not through space in the usual way, but with the growing of space itself. Their light stretches into longer, redder wavelengths on its journey, like a lullaby sung more slowly, The notes lengthened until they become almost a hum. Some lights we see now would, if sent today, be too stretched to arrive. Some we will never see at all, but none of this has to trouble the heart. It's a gentle truth that what is for us to receive, we will receive in its time. Let's step closer to this with a small, sleepy image. Imagine a pond at night, a still black surface with a few lanterns reflected, trembling in thin lines toward you. The farther lanterns shimmer as longer, fainter streaks. If a friend on the distant shore lowers their lantern into a paper bag, the line fades and vanishes, not because the pond refuses, but because the light no longer reaches the surface. So it is with the most remote galaxies. Their signals, stretched and softened by the expanding pond of space, dim into wavelengths our eyes cannot detect. Still the pond remains, smooth as silk, and the nearer reflections keep you company. We can tell a quiet chronology here, one that aligns with bedtime. In the earliest chapters of the universe, light and matter were mingled in a hot brightness. As cooling allowed atoms to settle into themselves, the cosmos became transparent enough for light to travel long distances. This is the afterglow we will visit later. Over eons, gravity gathered matter into stars and galaxies, and the fabric of space went on opening. The horizon, once tiny, grew, the nursery window widened, and more of the neighborhood came into view. Tonight we inherit that widened window, and the soft privilege of looking out. There is an almost parental quality to this idea of a horizon. It selects what can touch us, not with sternness, but with a kind of protective timing. We are spared the impossible task of perceiving the whole. Instead, we are offered a curated cascade, early light, arriving as a hush, nearby starlight flashing with familiar steadiness, mid-distance galaxies, arranged like beads, and beyond the unseeable, which is its own form of grace. Even unknowing can be a blanket. If the numbers wish to knock on the door, we can let only a few in, with slippers and soft voices. The observable universe contains on the order of hundreds of billions of galaxies, each with many more stars than you or I will ever count. But the mind has a good way of translating this into comfort. We need only one star to breathe under, one faint smudge to notice in binoculars, one comet someday to share with a friend on a cold night. The whole is enormous. The portion is perfect. Perhaps you're walking slowly, or imagining a window seat on a train at night. The glass becomes a moving mirror. Your reflection drifts over the passing lamps outside. The world is partly you, partly beyond you. The cosmic horizon is like that pane. It frames what's available and lets it glide by at a pace set by the universe, not by your worries. When you lean your forehead to the cool glass, the track rhythm below makes a lullaby, and for a few minutes you understand without needing to explain. We might, with care, touch the idea that not all edges are the same. A shoreline holds you because the land ends and the water begins, a change of state. A mountain ridgeline holds you because the climb becomes too steep, a change of gradient. The cosmic horizon holds you through the simplest change of all, a change in time available for information to travel. No cliffs, no surf, only the politeness of causality. It is the universe's way of keeping conversations local enough to be meaningful. If a thought tugs what lies beyond, you can answer it with a smile, more of the same perhaps, or something different in ways we cannot test. The calm posture is to let that be. Beyond the fog, the meadow likely continues, or maybe it opens into sea. Either way, tonight's path is safe and quiet, and the crickets keep their soft arithmetic at the edges. Let your body have a small inventory. The weight of your head on the pillow, or the light pull in your calves if you're standing. The gentle temperature on your cheekbones, slightly cooler than the air trapped under your collar. The way your jaw unknots when you remember, you can swallow slowly. This is your observable world. It fits. It is enough. We can close with a return to lanterns. You hold one, the yellow warmth of a nearby star, borrowed and brought close. Across the field, others shine, and you could name a few, the bright one you learned as a child, the red one that seems to pulse, the little dipper shape you always forget, and then suddenly find, farther still, the light's thin. Not because the field ends, but because the night insists on gentleness. Fewer demands, fewer details, a soft fade that invites rest. The horizon is not an absence, it is an ambient shah. And so we accept our bubble, not as a limit that cages, but as a cradle that holds. We do not need to touch the far side of everything to sleep well. We need only this, the sense that what arrives has had time to arrive, that what does not was never ours to carry, that the universe, large as it may be, keeps a considerate boundary around our small, luminous lives. In the next quiet stretch, we'll listen for the oldest light still travelling, the afterglow from the universe's earliest clarity, a background hum that has become one of science's softest lullabies. For now, let the fog thicken at the edges of thought, the lantern in your hand burn lower, and the field become a gentle dark. Your bubble is exactly the right size. Tonight we lean our ear toward a hush, so ancient it feels like a lullaby left running in the next room. The oldest light still travelling, the afterglow of a time when the universe was young and bright and close. If Chapter 1 invited us to think of starlight as postcards from the past, this is something different, more like soft background paper on which every postcard was written. It's everywhere, all at once, a faint wash you cannot see with your eyes, yet it touches every place your eyes could ever look. Scientists call it the cosmic microwave background, but the name is less important than the feeling. Imagine a warm room that has slowly cooled. Long after the fire in the hearth fades, the walls still hold a memory of heat. The air feels neutral, calm, yet there's a softness to it that suggests warmth once lived here. The cosmos is that room, and the background is the lingering warmth, stretched thin, quieted, but still present as a whisper. We step back in time, gently. In the earliest moments, the universe was a hot, crowded brightness, light and matter, mixed like steam and sparks. Everything jostled everything else. Photons, the small packets of light, couldn't travel far without colliding. It was, in a way, a universe that hummed but did not yet speak in sentences. Then, as space expanded, it cooled. Cooling allowed a simple miracle. Electrons and protons settled into each other to make the first atoms, and the fog of incessant collisions thinned. Light was finally free to roam. The moment that happened, some hundreds of thousands of years after the beginning, is the moment this old light set off. It has been travelling ever since, passing galaxies as they formed, weaving through clusters as they gathered, sliding through the empty fields we call voids, patient, unchanged, except for one gentle thing. As the universe stretched, the light stretched too. Its color slid from fierce brightness down into longer, softer wavelengths, like a lullaby sung slower and lower, until it's almost a hum you feel more than hear. Today it arrives not as visible light, but as a cool microwave glow, bathing everything everywhere with extraordinary steadiness. If you could hear it, it would not be a melody, yet it might feel melodic. A smooth, nearly uniform tone with tiny, tiny ripples, minute variations in temperature and density, so small that you would have to magnify them 100,000 times to notice. Those ripples are tenderly important. They are the seeds from which structure grew, the place where gravity could take hold just a little more here, a little less there, guiding matter into the filaments and clusters we see today. Without those faint wrinkles, the universe might have stayed a featureless fog. With them, it had something to become. We do not need the instruments to rest with this truth. It is enough to know that the sky carries an afterglow, so even that it could almost be mistaken for silence, and yet within that silence are the first hints of everything. The pattern is like frost on glass, nearly uniform, but with delicate swirls if you lean close. Scientists have leaned very close, and the swirls taught them about age, about shape, about how much of the cosmos is made of ordinary matter, and how much is something else, invisible but influential. But for bedtime, the simpler picture is kinder. The oldest light says the universe remembers. It remembers in a way that is gentle, consistent, and everywhere at once. You might enjoy a small sensory analog. Picture yourself in a quiet library after hours. The big lights are off. Only the exit signs glow. If you stay still, you notice a faint ambient sound. The ventilation, the settling of wood, a distant elevator sigh. It is so steady that your mind smooths it into calm. Within that hush, if you listened with sensitive ears, you'd hear the building's history, slight differences from one corridor to the next, clues to where the walls are thick, where the stairwell opens. The background tells the story, not with words but with presence. The cosmic background is like that, for space-time itself. There's a timeline we can hold softly, like a ribbon between thumb and forefinger. First a blazing youth, then cooling. Then the moment of release, the cosmos grows transparent. The light goes out, not as a departure, but as a beginning photons setting off in all directions, an exhale that never quite ends. Eons later, we, small and temporary, build instruments to notice this hush and translate it into pictures. The pictures look like oval maps with mottled blues and reds, colors assigned to represent the tiniest temperature differences. But behind the colors is a lullaby of regularity. To a sleepy mind, the message is peace. The universe's earliest echo is simple, almost uniform, almost perfectly even. It might be tempting to make it grand, to reach for the drama of beginnings, but this chapter asks for the opposite. It asks us to tuck the drama in, like a child after a story. What soothes here is the constancy. No matter where you point an antenna, the same faint glow arrives, across mountaintops and deserts, across oceans and the quiet interior of laboratories. In city nights and country dawns, the background is there, the same to the 1,000th part, making our particular places feel connected, woven into a broader fabric that neither pushes nor pulls, only rests. There is comfort, too, in how ordinary matter, the stuff you can touch, is only a small part of the story the background tells. Most of the universe's content seems to be invisible, dark matter shaping structures, dark energy coaxing expansion. The afterglow doesn't name these things in hard letters. It hints them through the way those tiny ripples arrange themselves. Think of wind on a wheat field. By watching the surface, you infer the currents you cannot see. You don't need to solve the wind to enjoy the pattern. You just need to notice that something consistent is happening and that you are safe within it. We can bring this all the way down to the body. Close your eyes for a few breaths and imagine the soft hiss between radio stations, the infinitesimal murmur that hides in the wires of the world. A fraction of that hush, in a sense, is the background whisper of the cosmos itself, arriving from every direction. It is a kindness to think that the night carries not only starlight and moonlight, but this tender ancient wash, older than any star, older even than the first galaxies, a shared inheritance like the ocean's slow tides. If you're awake enough for a gentle caveat, let it be this: we never see the beginning directly. The afterglow is a curtain that both reveals and conceals. It shows us the last moments before the universe became transparent, and in becoming transparent, hides the earlier brightness from our direct view. That might sound like a loss, but it can feel like a protection. There is a mercy in modesty. We learn what the universe is willing to share, and the rest remains a quiet mystery we don't have to carry to bed. A human echo. Family stories told many times. There's a point beyond which details blur, and that blurring becomes part of the comfort. We recall the shapes, the warmth, the repeated lines that make us smile. The cosmic background is the universe's oft-told story, smoothed by retelling, details softened, broad truths kept. It was hot, it says. It cooled, it became clear. And here we are. The refrain is calming. Let's picture one more scene. Slow and clean, a lake before dawn. Mist rides the water like a shawl. Everything is quiet enough that even your footsteps sound considerate. If you stand still, the lake reflects the paling sky, a continuous grey-blue with almost no features. Look longer, and faint gradients appear, slightly brighter there, slightly darker here. Those gradients will, with the sun, become waves and sparkles and moving shapes. But for now, they are the promise of what will be structure in its beginning. That is the background's gift, the earliest promise stretched across the whole sky. Perhaps you're wondering what this means for sleep, for the small private task of releasing the day. The connection might be this: steadiness heals. The body likes predictability. Even a very faint, very old predictability can guide the nervous system toward rest. To remember that the universe offers a constant surrounding hush is to borrow a template for calm. We can let our thoughts become nearly uniform, with tiny, harmless ripples that drift across and fade. We can accept a background we don't have to manage. There is a soft paradox worth smiling at. The most ancient light we know is also the most childlike, simple, round, shared by everyone. It levels us. Astronomers in distant countries, under different weather and languages, measure the same hush and come to compatible conclusions. In a world of detail and difference, that is a rare, drowsy gift. You can wrap yourself in it as a blanket of agreement. The sky is singing one long low note, and all of us everywhere are hearing it together. If a stray question visits, how do we know? Pat it gently and let it doze. Instruments have mapped the hush. Experiments have checked and rechecked. The picture has sharpened over decades, and still the core remains the same, a near uniform afterglow with delicate ripples. The exact numbers matter to those who stay awake to measure. For those who wish to sleep, the headline is plenty. The universe is traceable back to a quiet, even field of light, and your life unfolds inside that calm. We close by returning to the sensation of a room that has remembered warmth. The fire is not blazing. It does not demand attention, but the air, the walls, the quiet floorboards all carry a whisper of what was. You breathe and think, yes, this is a place I can rest. The cosmic background is that whisper on the largest scale imaginable. It says, without urgency, that everything now, the galaxies, the stars, the late night sounds outside your window, emerged from a smooth beginning. It says that change can arise from small differences, and that small differences do not disturb the peace. They create it. Let that be the note you carry forward. An everywhere hush, tenderly rippled, endlessly patient. In the next chapter, we'll feel how space itself stretches, not as a forceful pull, but as a gentle, ongoing opening, fabric unfurling, room being made. For now, let the oldest light hold you the way a quiet house holds the last warmth of day. Breathe into that steadiness. Let your thoughts lengthen into lower notes and allow the background to become your background too. The softest constant, the kindest hum, the universe's way of saying, sleep. There's a quiet you can hear only after midnight, a hush that makes even familiar rooms feel slightly larger, as if the walls have remembered how to breathe. Tonight we listen for that slow exhale on the grandest scale, space itself, stretching not as a tug on things, but as a soft widening of the in-between. Step into the dark again, or picture it if your curtains are drawn. The air has a coolness that leans kindly against your skin. Somewhere a refrigerator hums, a clock ticks, a distant tire sighs on wet road. These small sounds make a foreground. Behind them, the universe keeps its slower rhythm, the one we rarely notice because it never rushes, the rhythm in which distances grow even when the travelers stand still. It helps to imagine two lanterns floating on a night pond. They do not paddle, they do not drift on their own, yet hour by hour the water between them seems to become more water. The lanterns separate because the surface stretches, not because they push apart. Galaxies are like those lanterns. Mostly, they are not rockets fleeing through a fixed emptiness. They are carried by the widening of the medium itself. The fabric is the mover. When we say fabric, we mean a picture the mind can hold. Space is not cloth in a literal way, but this metaphor does something kind. It gives shape to the idea that distances can change without objects throwing themselves away from one another. If the cloth lengthens, the stitches, galaxies, sit farther apart, even if each stitch stays neatly sewn. Up close, gravity and local bonds keep neighborhoods together. Farther out, where the weave is loose and there is far more empty than thread, the expansion shows itself as a gentle increase in the spaces between clusters. You might feel a tug of skepticism. How can nothing stretch? The bedtime answer is softer than the textbook. What we call space is the set of relationships that locates everything with respect to everything else. Those relationships can evolve. Lines on the cosmic map redraw themselves in slow motion, and we measure that change in how light's color shifts on its long journey, lengthening into red, like a violin note drawn slower and lower until it becomes a calm hum. The technicalities can sleep, the picture can stay, distances breathe. There's a timeline, if we want to hold it lightly. In its earliest brightness, the universe expanded swiftly, like the quick rise of a loaf placed in a warm oven. Later, as matter gathered, gravity applied a gentle brake, letting structures form. Later still, something we label dark energy began to dominate the wide spaces, and the expansion started to quicken again, more like a patient sail catching a persistent wind. We do not need the cause to be settled to rest with the behavior. We can take the hint the world offers. The wide between grows. Perhaps you feel your own ribs widen on an easy inhale. The chest rises, not by dragging the air in, but by creating room. Air follows the room. In the same way, light follows the room the universe offers, and its steps lengthen, its color warms. This is why far galaxies look redder than they were when they sent their message, why some are dimmed beyond sight. The room has grown while the note was traveling. There is peace in remembering that not everything participates equally. Your body does not expand with the cosmos. Neither does the room, nor the planet, nor even the span across our galaxy's spiral arms, not in any way you would notice. Where gravity and other forces hold hands tightly, the stretch is resisted. Expansion lives in the big gaps, the long, quiet aisles between the superclusters, where almost nothing insists otherwise. The universe leaves neighborhoods intact and opens new lanes between towns. If you'd like a different picture, try dough sprinkled with seeds. As the dough rises, the seeds move apart without sliding over the surface. None of them is the center of the rising. Every seed can point to every other and say, "You're receding from me," and be equally right. This centerlessness is one of the universe's soft lessons. There is no privileged perch from which the expansion is truer. The view from anywhere is sincere. That too is calming. We are not missing the special seat. We are already in it. There is a gentler paradox tucked here, one that becomes a pillow rather than a puzzle if we let it. Expansion can carry two distant galaxies apart faster than light would cross the gap. And yet this does not break the universe's speed limit, because no one is outrunning light through space. The gap itself is widening. Think of two ants resting on a rubber band that's being stretched. The ants never sprint. The band lengthens between them. The rule about sprinting speed still holds, but the distance changes underneath. The cosmos keeps its promises and still finds room to grow. A small caveat, offered like a hand smoothing a sheet. Expansion is not something you could watch directly by staring at the sky. It reveals itself statistically in the way many galaxies' light shifts, in the way structures arrange. It is a pattern that emerges when you look widely and gently, not a drama that plays out in front of one pair of eyes on one quiet night. For sleep, this is perfect. Expansion is background behavior, too slow to clang on the nerves, almost too steady to feel, except in the deep ease that comes from trusting the world's long tendencies. Let's invite the senses again. You might be lying on your back, feeling the way the mattress meets you, how it yields just where you are heavier, how it supports the lighter curves. Space, in a way, does this too. It responds to mass by bending gently, making paths for light and motion. On top of this sculpted surface, the whole sheet is lengthening. The bend and the stretch happen together, shape and scale duet partners playing slow and slower. The music is so drawn out that a single note lasts a lifetime. Good music for sleeping. There is kindness in how expansion honors locality. Close bonds remain. Planet to person, city to hill, star to its swarm, all of that keeps its promises while the larger fabric unfurls. This can be a model for how to hold a day. Let the big context open and open without asking you to hold it. Keep your attention at neighborhood scale, where meaning has handholds. The universe is vast enough to make the distances grow and intimate enough to keep you in place, safe in your small lattice of ties. A gentle chronology can rock us here. First, the universe opens quickly, smoothing wrinkles, like pulling a sheet tight over a bed. Then it slows enough for the first stars to spark, clusters to gather, filaments to braid the darkness. Later, the wide emptiness between those braids begins to dominate, and the opening resumes its quiet acceleration. None of this is an emergency. It is a long, slow waltz, counted in measures of billions of years. If you imagine a conductor, they barely move, just a fingertip tracing a circle in the air. The human echo is easy to find. We live through stretches in which our lives open new rooms, new horizons, new distances to loved ones who do not leave us so much as the space between lives fills with commitments, with time. Then we live through gather years, circling closer to a home, a craft, a few people. Both movements can feel natural. Both can be gentle. Remembering that even the universe alternates between smoothing and settling can let you forgive your own seasons, the times you became more spacious and the times you tucked in. If a stray thought arrives, what will happen eventually? Let it sit beside you like a friendly cat that comes and goes. The long outlook suggests more opening in the widest places, more redshifting of the most distant lights, a deepening quiet between the great lanterns. But your lifetime is anchored close to half-warm stars, to the swirl of our own galaxy, to the immediately visible friends of the night sky. The future at human scale is steady. The expansion's grand hush remains a backdrop, not a demand. Try a last image before we close your eyes further. Imagine a great slow sail unfurling in darkness. It doesn't snap or billow. It simply drops more and more cloth into the night, and the stars sewn into that sail, tiny white stitches, ease apart as the canvas takes shape. You are not clinging to the hem. You are lying on soft grass below, watching the fabric open so smoothly it becomes indistinguishable from the sky. There is no corner where the sail begins, no edge where it ends, only the sense that the night has given itself more room to be night. When we let this idea settle, the takeaways are small and kind. Space stretches. You don't have to distant things recede without accusing you of falling behind. What is near remains near. What is for you to notice arrives at a human pace, in a human frame. The big breath goes on, whether you measure it or sleep through it, and sleeping through it is perfectly acceptable. We will carry this softness into the next gentle turn, where we'll trace shapes without edges, how a universe can be finite in a way that never meets a wall, how you can walk forward forever, and only loop into familiarity. But for now, float with the lanterns. Feel the pond become a little more pond between them. Let the distances expand until they blur into the comfort of far, and let near be enough. Your pillow, your breath, the quiet fabric of night unrolling around you, wide, wider, sleep. There's a certain peace that arrives when hallways don't end, when you can wander without worrying about doors that won't open or signs that tell you to turn back. Tonight we walk such a hallway in our minds, a corridor without walls, a path that loops on itself so gently you might not notice the return. We are going to feel what it means for the universe to have shape, perhaps a subtle curve, without having an edge. Not a cliff into nothing, not a rim where stars spill, only a geometry that guides how straight lines behave over grand distances. Step outside, or imagine it. The air cooler now, a thin gloss of damp on leaves. The street a quiet ledger of last sounds. Overhead a familiar sprawl. You choose a star and trace an invisible arrow from it across the sky, through the dark, through distance upon distance. Does that arrow ever meet a boundary? The gentle answer, as far as our best pictures suggest, is no. You could travel forever in a straight line and never find a wall. But the more intriguing thought is this: straight might not be what we think it is when the distances become enormous. On Earth, we learn this early without using the word geometry. Ships vanish below the horizon, not because they fall off the edge, but because the sea bends away. Walk straight long enough on a sphere, keeping your heading fixed, tracing the shortest path, and you will return to where you began. The path was straight in the surface's own logic, yet it looped. That's the trick of curvature. It changes how lines meet, how triangles add up, how the world closes on itself without ever putting up a wall. Let's make the picture softer still. Imagine a gentle globe in the dark, not lit, only felt, tiny creatures. Let's say little night ants live upon its surface. They know nothing of the three-dimensional space around it. Their whole world is the skin they walk. They carry rulers made of starlight, or perhaps of patient footfalls. They draw triangles by walking 3 straight paths and coming back to the start. On a flat sheet, their triangles' angles would sum to a familiar amount. On the globe, the sum is larger. They do not need a cliff to tell them the world is special. The angles do the telling, and yet for all their walking, they never find an edge. Cosmology invites us into a similar humility. Our straight lines are the paths light takes when nothing bends it. Geodesics, the quietest routes through space-time. If the universe as a whole has curvature, those routes can do surprising things over unfathomable reaches. They might converge or diverge, wrap in ways our day-scale intuition doesn't predict. But surprise doesn't have to equal alarm. It can be like a familiar trail that, after hours of wandering, returns you to a clearing you love, and you smile because the loop was so wide you forgot it could close. What do we know? We know that on scales we can measure, space appears astonishingly close to flat, so flat that if there is a curve, it is vast and gentle, like a bowl so wide your eyes read it as level. Flatness means triangles behave themselves. Parallel lines are polite. Straight light keeps its steady way. And yet a universe can be both nearly flat locally and still finite globally, depending on topology, the way space connects to itself. Picture a sheet of paper whose opposite edges have been joined, first into a tube, then with another join into something like the surface of a donut. This donut, this torus, is boundaryless, yet if you walk long enough, you revisit earlier streets. No cliff, only recurring neighborhoods. We can hold this lightly with a bedtime map. Imagine a tiny cosmonaut on a two-dimensional video game screen that wraps at the edges. Move right and you re-enter from the left. Go up and you arrive from below. To the cosmonaut, there are no edges. Only a world where far journeys sometimes bring familiar horizons back into view from unexpected sides. If light could cross the universe that way, if space connected back upon itself, we might in principle see echoes of the same distant structures in different directions, ghost images separated by great arcs. Scientists have searched for such repeating patterns in the sky's oldest light, like matching wallpaper swatches. So far, the patterns we expect from small wraparounds haven't shown. That nudges us toward a picture either very large or truly unwrapped. But the story remains open a crack, the way a bedroom door stays ajar to let in a comforting sliver of hall light. Pausing to notice your breath can make this gentler. Inhale, the ribs widen a little. Exhale, the body settles. The curves you feel are local. Chest, shoulder, pillow. Scale up in your mind, and let curvature be as subtle as a tone you sense, rather than a line you see. The cosmos might be flat, it might be curved, and either way, it can be without edges. The absence of an edge is not a drama, it is a mercy. It means there is no ultimate boundary to collide with, no outer shell to scratch. There is only more path, or a loop so generous you never tire of its return. We can visit three archetypes with friendly names: positively curved, like the globe, negatively curved, like a saddle, and flat, like the ideal table. On the globe, lines that begin apart can meet again. Triangles have too much angle. On the saddle, lines that begin together drift wider than you'd expect. Triangles have too little. On the flat plane, everything behaves just so. The universe can, in principle, wear any of these shapes as an average over huge scales. Observations lean toward flatness, with tiny allowances for error. Think of a carpenter's level bubble settling near the center. The difference from perfect so small, you'd need a jeweler's looper to see it. That's the scale of our current comfort. But shape is only part of the story. Connection is the other. A room can be flat and still loop, like that game screen or the donut, if its edges quietly identify with one another, or it can be curved and still infinite, like a saddle that extends without end in every direction. The combinations are many, like quilt patterns, squares that meet in new ways to make a seamless spread. The mind needn't catalogue them to fall asleep. It can rest in the moral of the quilt. You can be enclosed without walls. You can be endless without edges. Perhaps this helps in daily life. Edges are where responsibilities change. The sidewalk ends. The property line begins. The fence marks where one set of rules trades places with another. A universe without an edge suggests a kindness. There's no outer jurisdiction to cross, no final keep-out sign, no frontier to fear. The laws hold everywhere you go, the way gravity and light behave here and there, in our neighborhood and in the most remote lanes of the cosmic web. Familiarity extends. That's a soothing thought to take under the covers. Let's make this tactile. Imagine running your hand over a great taut drum. You can't feel the edges because you've been shrunk to the size of a fingerprint, and the drum is the world. The skin is smooth. If there's curvature, it is so slight you register it only as a tendency for your straightest path to arc imperceptibly over long travel. A drop of water rolls, you follow it. Hours later, you pass a faint smear from your own earlier touch and don't know you've met yourself again. If the drum is vast enough, most lives will pass without a single repetition. That's one way an edgeless, finite world can feel like an infinite one. There are tender caveats. Even if space is boundaryless, our view has boundaries, as we felt in the last chapter, the horizon drawn by time. And even if space is globally curved or multiply connected, local patches can be very well behaved, the way a small map of your town can be flat and faithful, even though the planet beneath it is round. We live our days on the map. We sleep best when we let the globe hold the larger arc. A bit of quiet chronology can rock us. Long ago, the universe's earliest light imprinted clues about shape-tiny variations frozen into that everywhere whisper. Later, galaxies formed and arranged themselves along filaments and clusters, their distribution offering more hints about curvature and connection. As instruments improved, the hints sharpened toward a consensus of near flatness. But science is patient. It leaves space for revisions, as you might leave space in a suitcase for a souvenir you haven't found yet. The humility in that posture is calming. We don't force the world to fit. We let it tell us slowly. You may wonder, if there's no edge, where is the center? The gentlest answer is everywhere is a fair center from its own point of view. On a sphere, every point can claim the symmetry of being here. In an expanding universe without a preferred spot, each galaxy sees others receding in a pattern that looks centered on itself. This is not arrogance, it's geometry. A friendly democracy of viewpoints. You can stand in your backyard or at a window and say, truthfully, from here, the universe moves as if I were in the middle. So can someone on a distant world under a different sky. Both of you are right. That feels like a lullaby in an age of argument. If the mind asks for an image to keep, let it be an endless winter path across gently rolling snow. The horizon repeats the same low shapes in every direction. The air is still, the crunch beneath your boots is soft and regular. You can walk and walk, and the scene does not threaten with cliffs or chasms. Perhaps, after a very long time, you come upon your own earlier footprints, wind-lifted and half erased, and you smile without needing to solve how. The landscape has no edge, and yet it encloses you in sameness, in safety. We can return to triangles for one last drowsy lesson. Hold your hands up, fingertips meeting to make a small peak thumbs apart, the simplest mountain. On flat ground, a triangle drawn at your feet adds to a familiar sum. Now picture that same triangle draped over a sphere. Larger, stretched, the sum grows. On a saddle, it shrinks. These are just ways the world says, I have character. Your life has character too. Seasons where paths converge, seasons where they diverge, and long flats where they keep their distance. All of it can be navigated without fear of falling off. Before we close, take a tiny inventory of the room, the border where light fades to shadow on the far wall, the way the ceiling meets the corners, the subtle curve where a blanket falls from knee to mattress. Edges abound indoors. Step into the sky with your thoughts, and the edges fall away. There is only open shape, perhaps so flat that its curve can be ignored, perhaps curved so softly that it still welcomes straight travelers with loops of return. Either way, the lesson for sleep is the same. There is nowhere you must stop. There is nowhere you will be asked to stand guard. You can walk the hallway of night and find it forever kind. In the next chapter, we'll feel for the hidden scaffolding, the quiet matter that holds galaxies together, and the gentler something that coaxes the wide spaces to widen. Names like dark matter and dark energy sound dramatic, but we'll treat them as we've treated everything tonight, as behaviors we observe, patterns that reassure more than they alarm. For now, let the geometry dissolve into comfort. No edges, just shape and room. A quilt that goes on, a path that loops, and you already drifting along it, eyes half closed, carried. There's a hush to certain winter nights, when the air feels emptier than usual, wide, still, almost glassy. You step outside, and the stars seem to hang with extra clarity, as if the world has been tidied. You could believe there's nothing between you and those lights, just distance, just clean dark. But tonight we'll lean into the gentle opposite, an unseen fullness, a quiet framework that helps the luminous things keep their poise, a scaffolding you cannot touch, and a softer something that coaxes the empty places to widen. Names exist, dark matter, dark energy, but names are just tags on behavior. What soothes is the pattern, a cosmos supported and spacious, made stable not by noise but by whisper. Let your breath settle. The ground is cool underfoot, even through the soles. A slight grain in the air brushes your cheeks, the tiniest movement, almost like silk drawn over skin. Overhead, the big constellations are where you left them, the steady citizens of the season. Between those jeweled punctures, a lot of nothing, or so it looks. The first kindness of this chapter is to imagine that nothing as a patient presence, weight without shine, a supportive hush, not an intruder, not a threat, more like the wooden frame within a wall, invisible behind paint and pictures, holding the room square so your sleep can be easy. If you picture a galaxy, one of those great halls we admire in photographs, you might see a disk of stars, dusty lanes, a bright heart. What you likely can't picture at first is the halo, the round, extended cocoon that envelops the disk, reaching far beyond the visible edge. That halo is where the hidden weight lives. Without it, the stars at the rim would spin too fast to stay. Like water slung from a bucket, they'd spray outward, and the graceful spiral would unravel. Yet the spirals hold, their outer stars keep surprising speed and still remain bound. This is one of the earliest lullabies the universe sang to astronomers. There is more here than you can see. Trust the curve of motion. We learn to listen to those curves, the rotation speeds of stars, the paths of galaxies within clusters, the way light bends when it passes by massive things. Each method, independent, like three soft instruments in a chamber trio, sounded the same motif. Unseen matter is present, outnumbering the luminous by several to one. It does not glow, does not absorb, does not tangle itself in light. It moves through like a respectful visitor, shaping outcomes and then stepping back. It's not a villain lurking, It's a host setting the chairs so the party can gather. On larger scales still, the hidden weight becomes even more comforting, because it explains the very pattern of the cosmic web, the filaments and nodes where galaxies string themselves like lanterns along country roads. Tiny wrinkles present in the earliest afterglow grew into these filaments because something extra carried momentum and gathered first, giving ordinary matter, the kind that sparks, cools, and makes stars, a scaffold to follow. Imagine frost forming on a window. The delicate first lines trace invisible stress paths in the glass, and then more ice collects along those guides, until patterns are visible to the eye. Dark matter is like those invisible stress paths, writing the underscript on which light later cursives its bright words. A caveat, offered softly: we do not yet know what dark matter is in the sense of what particle, what family of interactions. We know it behaves like a calm, gravitating sea, cold in its motion, reluctant to clump into tiny knots, happy to cradle galaxies without colliding with their light. The labels we use, cold, halo, collisionless, are tender descriptions of behavior, not final identities. That uncertainty, for bedtime, is not a threat but a lull. It says, your rest doesn't depend on finishing the dictionary. The pattern holds whether or not we've named every letter. Perhaps you'd like a more earthly picture. Think of a well-loved book whose spine you never see because it's beneath the dust jacket. The story hangs on that spine. The pages could not keep their order without it. You hold the book at night, sink into its chapters, and at every moment the hidden binding is doing its quiet work, not glamorous, not the headline, but steady. Dark matter is the spine of the cosmic novel. Without it, the chapters would scatter. Now to the second presence, the softer something that inhabits the wide, wide spaces and encourages them to become wider. The term we use is dark energy, a phrase that sounds more dramatic than bedtime requires. Think of it as the universe's habit of graceful expansion, a property of the vacuum that leans toward opening. Long ago, gravity's collective pull slowed the expansion like a hand on a swing. In recent cosmic centuries, measured in billions of our years, the opening has begun to quicken again, as if the push in emptiness is now just a little stronger than the pull of everything that has gathered. No rushing, no tearing, only an easing apart in the most vacant aisles. You don't need the measurements to sleep, but the measurements are courteous. Supernovae used as standard candles growing dimmer than expected, galaxy clustering patterns with lengths that serve as rulers, the background's ripples cross-checked against wide surveys, all pointing, with soft agreement, toward a universe that is not only expanding, but doing so with a slight persistent acceleration. If gravity is the hand that laces fingers and brings matter close, dark energy is the fingertip on the page that turns it, opening to the next spread, quiet, certain, unhurried. A small sensory invitation. Imagine standing in a cathedral when no one else is there. The air is still, the space is its own presence. The way it holds sound, the way footsteps return, as the gentlest echo. Dark energy is like the cathedralness of the cathedral, the quality of openness that doesn't belong to any single stone, but to the arrangement between them. You don't see the openness, but you feel what it allows. If the stones were closer, the echo would be different. The building's character is the space it offers. There's a human parallel, easy to cradle. In your life, some supports are obvious: friends, family, skills. Others are quieter, the routines that keep your days held together, the empty spaces in a calendar that permit recovery, the walks you take without naming them exercise. Dark matter is like the steady friend who lifts without spotlight, Dark energy is like the healthy emptiness that keeps you from crowding yourself into a corner. Both are invisible to onlookers. Both are vital to shape and ease. We can rock through a gentle chronology. Early on, density ruled. Matter gathered itself, steered by the hidden scaffold, into nests where stars would kindle and planets would someday wander. During that time, the universe's opening slowed, like a breath paused at the top. Later, as the great gaps widened and the average pull of matter thinned, the vacuum's tendency to open became more apparent. The breath resumed, not shallow, not panting, just a little deeper each time. Look out now at very distant galaxies, and you find their light stretched and softened more than it would be if the opening had never gained that extra ease. The oldest lanterns keep their distance with a touch more persuasion. Does this mean the night is slipping away from itself? That can sound lonesome. But at the human scale, your scale, the bonds remain. Our galaxy and its near companions are bound far more strongly than the wide opening can unlace. Night skies remain. Night skies. The Andromeda galaxy still drifts toward us on its slow, inevitable visit a few billion years hence, a date far beyond personal concern. In other words, expansion's gentlest acceleration is a global trait with local humility. Neighborhoods are respected. The quilt stretches between the patches, not through them. If a question knocks, where do these ideas come from? How sure are we? Let it sit like a cup warming your hands. The evidence is cooperative. Patterns in the oldest light motions within clusters, the bending of distant beams, the way galaxies arrange in space, the rhythm of supernovae flicker. Each line of listening hums in tune with the others. Could the tune change with better ears? It might shift key slightly, or reveal harmonies we missed. But the melody that there is support we don't see, and an openness that belongs to the vacuum, has proven robust, like a song you can recognize across different instruments and rooms. We can let ourselves notice the language. Dark here is more about modesty than menace. It says, I do not shine in your eyes, but I make a difference you can weigh. Many things we cherish are like that. Sleep itself, which repairs invisibly. Trust, which holds much without spectacle. Time with someone dear, which leaves the room looking the same, and your insides rearranged to greater ease. The universe seems to run on a lot of quiet contributions. That feels right. Let your body find small anchors, the weight of your feet, or the drift of your hand, the slope of shoulder into pillow, the soft pull in the back of the neck releasing. These are the visible effects of hidden frameworks, bones and ligaments, the nervous system's slow recalibration toward rest. You don't need to supervise. In the same way galaxies don't audit their halos, the cosmos does not manage its opening. The support, the spaces, space. There's a gentle paradox, comforting if we hold it like a smooth stone in the palm. The things that most define the universe's large-scale behavior are the ones we least directly sense. Ordinary matter, the one that makes stars and soup and songs, is a minority partner in the ledger of the cosmos, and yet it's the one that writes poems about the ledger. Perhaps that's always the way awareness perched on a small island, telling stories of the sea that allows the island to be. The sea doesn't ask for a name to keep moving. The island doesn't need to map every current to feel safe on its sand. If you want a sleep-ready image to keep, here is one, a winter orchard at dusk. The trees are naked of leaves, dark shapes against a pale sky. You see branches tangled, particular, each one a choice the tree made over seasons. But you also feel something else, something that isn't a visible thing. The regular spacing of trunks, the generous avenues of air between rows, the way the layout invites wind to pass and light to enter. The orchard would not be an orchard without that pattern of empty. Dark matter is the trunk and branch strength that holds the shape. Dark energy is the invitation made by the open rose. Together they give you a place you could walk for a long time without snag or crowd. A place where you could fall asleep standing up if you had to, head on a friendly shoulder of bark. Before we close, a few small assurances, offered the way one might straighten a blanket's edge. We do not need to solve the identities of the hidden actors tonight. We can hold the behaviors instead. Unseen weight keeps galaxies gathered and helps right the web. Unseen openness lets the widest distances widen a bit more with time. Neither asks anything of you. They do not rush, they do not shout, they do not pivot on human scales. They are background kindness, structure and room. And so we settle with the simplest refrain. The universe is steadied by what we cannot see, and eased apart by a softness we do not feel. Our lives are too. When you turn out the light, hidden frameworks keep you, hidden spaces welcome you. You are held by bones and trust and routine. You are welcomed by silence and night, and the empty hours that let the day be digested. The cosmos offers this model, and then leaves you to rest within it. In the next quiet wandering, we'll answer an old nighttime question with a gentle truth. Why the sky, with so many stars, is not blinding but dark. The explanation is a comfort, not a correction, and it will fold neatly into everything we've already felt. Time's patience, distance courtesy, the way expansion lengthens and softens light. For now, let the hidden scaffolding cradle your thoughts the way halos cradle galaxies, firm but not tight, present but not clamoring. Let the wide spaces widen, just enough for your breath to lengthen, and slip easily into the supportive dark. There's an old drowsy puzzle that visits people who love the night. If the universe holds so many stars, why is the sky not crowded with light? Why is it instead a gentle dark, with points so spare you can count them from a backyard chair? If every direction led to a star, the story goes, the night should blaze like a sun. Yet it doesn't. Tonight we answer this in a way that soothes rather than solves, a sleepy braid of reasons that agree without arguing, time, distance, and the way the universe quietly opens its hand. Step outside, or imagine it clearly enough to feel the air. The dark has its texture, soft, cool, a low hush threading between leaves. You look up and find not a sheet of brightness, but an embroidery. Here a spark, there a small cluster, then long calming stretches of nothing at all. The nothing is not empty. It's merciful. It gives the eyes places to rest, the mind a field to wander that isn't crowded by glare. The night on most evenings is kind. First, time our patient ally. Stars are not eternal lamps set in a fixed ceiling. They are lives in progress, with beginnings and endings. The universe itself has an age you can hold as a feeling, rather than a number, old enough for galaxies to learn their shapes, young enough that light has not had forever to arrive. What you see when you look out is not a completed pattern, but a story partway told. The farthest lights have not yet had time to send their brightness all the way to you. Like letters posted from a distant shore, many are still at sea. The mailbox tonight holds only what could reach you by now. Then, distance. Its gentleness and its discipline. Even for the stars we can receive, light grows thin as it travels. Imagine standing on a winter night with a lantern. A few steps away, your face is warmed by it. Farther, you see only the shape of your breath in the air, outlined by the glow. Farther still, the lantern becomes a point. Farther again, it becomes a suggestion, an idea. Light spreads out over an ever-widening sphere, and the brightness per patch dwindles. Multiply the lantern by 100, a million, and the thinning still applies. The sky collects many such points, but each contributes less the farther it is. The result is a tapestry that never saturates, a sum that converges to calm. And then the quiet third reason, the one we've been cradling for chapters, the fabric of space stretches. As the universe opens, light on long journeys lengthens into redder shades, and redder still, slipping out of the band our eyes can see. A far star's message might begin as a keen white note and arrive as a low softened hum, or become silence to human pupils altogether, present, but beyond our range. Expansion dims and warms the distant radiance without malice, the way mist gentles a shoreline of lamps at dawn. The further the lantern, the longer and softer its message, until it folds into the background hush. These are the main threads. There are smaller, friendly stitches too. Dust. The fine chalk of exploded stars floats between us and some of the lights, reddening and dimming them like a thin curtain. The Milky Way's own dusty lanes make riverine shadows across summer skies, not to erase, but to shape the view. Clouds, city haze, and humidity have their say on local nights, and even the atmosphere's steadiness can smooth the world to a deeper dark. None of this is a loss we must mourn at midnight. The dimming is a generosity to the senses. We are spared the burden of infinite brightness. We receive, instead, just enough. If you like, trace a gentle chronology with me. In a younger universe, the sky would have been starless, no lamps yet lit, only the afterglow we felt last chapter. Then the first stars, blue and brief, then the slow multiplication of lights, then the building of galaxies, clusters and webs. Even now, countless fires are still being born. Countless are going out. Between them, huge expanses of clean dark spread like fields, left fallow, quiet and restorative. The night we inherit is the product of cycles, not a snapshot of saturation. There is a human comfort bound up with this. We are made to notice the contrast between light and dark. Our eyes, our attention, our emotions settle when the scene offers both. A sky that blazed at every point would be a sky without rest, the cosmic equivalent of a room with all the lights on, all the time. Instead, nature gives us dimmer switches, the vastness of time, the law of distance, the soft hand of expansion. It hands us a ceiling painted with punctuation rather than paragraphs, so we can read a little and breathe a lot. Consider a field of fireflies. At peak summer, you might imagine so many that the meadow turns to daylight. It never does. Glows rise and fade, drift and return, no two flash in exact unison. The dark between pulses holds the scene together. The night sky is like that. Countless beacons, yes, but each with rhythms, lifespans, distances that make them ensembles, not a floodlight. Darkness in the gaps is not a failure of light. It is the stage that lets light mean something. If a contrary thought nudges, what if the universe were infinite and eternal and starred at every turn? It is worth noting, softly, that the conditions you're imagining are not the ones we seem to live within. The world we have wears time on its sleeve. It began hot. It has cooled. It keeps changing. The lamps have not been burning forever, and the space between them is not static. Those two facts, married with distance courtesy, soften the sky to kindness. The paradox dissolves like sugar in tea. Let's invite the body in. The pupils widen in the dark. The iris loosens its grip. More starlight slips through. But there is a limit to how much we can welcome, and the universe seems to respect that limit with grace. Even under the driest mountain sky, Even far from any lamp, the dome above is not blazing. It is textured, crowded in some directions, sparse in others, always navigable by a sleepy mind. You can pick a bright anchor, a planet, perhaps, and let the nearby points settle into a quiet halo. This is how eyes fall closed. Focus gently, then let the rest soften. If you'd like an image to keep, imagine a candle-lit church at night. The nave is long, the ceiling lost in shadow. A handful of tapers glow along the side aisles, their light falling in small ovals on stone and wood. Most of the space remains dark, but the darkness is not empty. It's alive with the scent of old wood, the memory of footsteps, the faint echo of your breath. The few lights are enough to tell you where you are, to make the structure legible. More light would not mean more peace. It would crowd the story. The universe knows this tone. There's a gentle lesson folded in. Not every possibility needs to fill its container. The cosmos could have been otherwise. Instead, it is this, finite in age, generous in room, luminously sparse at human scale. That sparseness is the soul of wonder. A single meteor on a random night feels like a privilege because it crosses so much quiet. A comet borrowed from the outer dark draws its slow chalk line against a canvas that receives it with dignity. Even the Milky Way's band, riotous with stars, sets itself apart with lanes of shadow, gaps that keep the brightness from overwhelming the heart. We can, if we like, place one small number thought on the pillow and let it doze. Stars are many, yes, perhaps more than grains of sand on a beach, if you count across all galaxies. But beaches have long, long runs of unmarked shore between clusters of footprints. So does the sky. The spacing is part of the story. The sum of very many, each giving less and less with distance, is not an explosion. It's a curve that flattens to a serenity. Mathematics knows this. So does a midnight walk. There is kindness in how this answer meets daily life. Sometimes we fear that if we don't do everything, the result will be nothing, that if every hour isn't lit, the day will fail. Nights teach the opposite. Leave room, and meaning becomes visible. Let tasks thin with distance, and what remains glows more clearly. Expansion, in human terms, might be your calendar learning to breathe. Time, in human terms, might be the permission to wait. Distance, in human terms, might be the space you keep between one concern and the next, so you can sleep. A small caveat, a friendly one: there are places on Earth and above it where the sky can blaze. Observatories stacked with long exposure images, instruments that drink light patiently and pour it back as crowded splendor. Even then, the brightness is a craft work, a way of adding what the eye, in a moment, cannot collect. The raw experience of standing under the universe remains what it has always been, a quiet dome pricked by reminders. Before we close, let's return to the sensory now. Feel the way the cool air has settled along the floor or across the bedspread. Hear the near silence, maybe a distant pipe clicking, a soft appliance sigh, a leaf small scrape against a window. Darkness gathers the edges of the room and rounds them. The sky does the same for thought, rounding the day's edges until they fit together without jarring. The unlit spaces help the lit ones speak, and then the lit ones hum themselves quieter, and you are left with the kind of dark that welcomes. So the answer becomes a lullaby. The sky is dark because the universe is young enough to be gentle, wide enough to let light thin, and open enough to lay a soft hand on faraway beams and lengthen them into rest. Dust measures the brightness for us. Clouds of gas turn spotlights into lanterns. The months and years turn lanterns into memories. And still enough stars remain to guide a midnight walk to the porch and back, to name one or two companions above the roofline, to find the steady planet near the horizon, and wish on it like a child. Let this soothe the part of you that wants everything all at once. The night gives you exactly what you need, a few bright points to anchor the story, and a loving expanse of dark to carry you towards sleep. In the next chapter, we'll listen to gravity's quiet curves, the way matter shapes the routes things prefer to take, and how even those curves send the gentlest ripples through the fabric we've learned to feel. For now, let the dimness be proof of kindness. Let the gaps cradle your attention. Let the unlit vastness be the pillow under every star, and rest. There's a certain moment after midnight when even familiar rooms seem to lean toward stillness. Pictures rest more squarely on their hooks. Chairs remember their shape. The floor finds its hush. In that softened clarity, we can feel a truth the daytime skips past things prefer paths. They don't always move in straight lines, and when they curve, there is a reason. Tonight we listen for that reason spoken quietly. The way mass bends the stage beneath us, so motion becomes a kind of courtesy, a willingness to follow the gentle slope. Step with me into the dark you carry in your mind. The air is neutral, almost cool at the top lip, warmer where the blanket cups your ribs. In the distance, one small sound, perhaps a fan, keeps steady time. Above, the sky remains its deep, forgiving canvas. Gravity, at this hour, isn't a command, it's a shape. The old story says it pulls like a hand on a sleeve. The newer, softer telling suggests it invites, like a valley suggesting the course of a river. The world's fabric bends around mass and energy, and things, respectful of that architecture, prefer to drift along the contours. Imagine a marble on a slightly stretched sheet. Place a smooth stone near the middle, and the sheet curves, not with drama, but with a quiet depression, a hint of slope. Roll the marble anywhere nearby, and it arcs, not because the stone reached out and tugged, but because the straightest path on the bent surface isn't a straight line in our eyes. Light behaves the same way. A beam passing near a star bends just enough to reveal the curve. The path it takes is still the least fussy route. The route itself has become a gentle arc. This is gravity's lullaby. Not a shout, but a soft change in what straight means. If you could watch space-time itself, you might see a slow choreography, planets walking ovals around their suns, moons tracing smaller ovals around those planets, each motion a compromise between forward momentum and the ease-down slopes of the local geometry. These curves are not cages, they're preferred lines penciled onto a wide page. Over immense times, slight changes accumulate, seasons precess, orbits trade places with new resonances, but the feeling is consistent, a conversation between shape and motion, neither hurried, neither harsh. Consider your own choice to lie down. You're not pulled into sleep by a rope. You find the comfortable hollow and let yourself follow it. Gravity in the grand picture is like that, an architecture that suggests ease. Mass tells space-time how to curve, space-time tells mass how to move. The sentence is brief, the partnership long. Once you hear it, the night feels even more hospitable. You can relax into a world that bends not to trap you, but to hold you. There's an image you might enjoy keeping, a river meeting a broad bend. The water doesn't argue. It leans naturally into the outer bank, traces a gentle arc, and continues. If a leaf rides the surface, it travels the curve as if it were its own intention. Planets are such leaves, stars too, and we, smaller still, are leaves on leaves. We inherit the curve without noticing until we look out and see everything obeying the same kindness. At larger scales, the curve grows subtle, and yet its effects write shy miracles across the sky. A distant galaxy, hidden behind a closer cluster, has its light detoured around the cluster's mass. To us it appears as a ring, or a stretched arc, or mirrored twins, gravitational lensing, the sheet's slope on majestic display. The background object is not torn or twisted. Its photons simply take the paths the bent fabric offers. Astronomers read those patterns like fingerprints, soft clues to the hidden weights within the cluster. To a sleepy mind, the wonder is gentler. Gravity makes dim things visible by curving light into view. The universe is a careful host, seating shy guests where we can notice them. Closer to home, we feel curvature as predictability. Apples fall, yes, but they also describe an arc when tossed, a curve so familiar that a child learns it by play. Satellites trace tidy ellipses, night after night, because the Earth makes a hollow in space-time they prefer not to climb out of. The International Space Station is often described as falling around the Earth, which is another way to say it follows the local straightest path on a bent sheet, forever missing the ground. Our lives are held in such reliable bends that we rarely need to think about them. Reliability is a lullaby in a restless century. There is a soft humility in how gravity relates to speed. Light, the swiftest messenger, does not ignore curves. It honors them, even at its unchanging pace. It traces the bent routes space-time provides. This means gravity is not a force that must catch light. It is a change in the track itself. The railroad bends and the train stays on it. And so starlight that passes near the sun during an eclipse arrives a hair's breadth shifted from where we'd expect on a flat map. The shift is tiny, but the implication is grand and oddly soothing. The stage is active, and our instruments, like careful listeners, can hear it speak. At times, the stage rings. When massive objects, two black holes, two neutron stars, wheel tightly around each other and then merge, they send ripples through space-time itself. Gravitational waves, we call them. Though the name is bigger than the experience, these waves pass through you without consequence, lengthening and shortening distance by less than a proton's width. Instruments built like patient cathedrals can just barely register the faint, clean chirp. To imagine it at bedtime is to imagine the far universe striking a crystal glass and letting the note sail outward, harmless and almost not there. A bell rung once, very far away, arriving as the gentlest tremor in the fabric of here. You may wonder about the places where gravity's curves deepen so much that even light cannot climb. Black holes, the sleepiest mouths in space. We can speak of them softly, without drama. A black hole is not a mouth that devours so much as a region where the slopes become inexorable, cross a certain boundary, and every path forward leads further in, not by violence, but by geometry. From afar, a black hole is a calm anchor. It shapes the orbits around it. It holds a galaxy's center steady. It sometimes wears a thin, bright necklace of infalling matter that shines before it disappears from view. The hole itself makes no sound, issues no threat from across interstellar rooms. It is the deepest bowl in an already gentle basin, and it sits where it sits, night after night, patient as stone. We can rock through a light chronology. The first stars kindled in tiny hollows within the great cosmic sheet. Their gravity deepened the local curves. Gas spiraled in, lit more stars, small galaxies merged into larger ones. Clusters found their balance within long filaments. Each act was an acceptance of the map's suggestions. There were no orders given, only contours offered and followed. With time, even light from violent events smoothed into the background quiet, and the overall shape shifted so slowly that entire civilizations could take comfort in the reliability of their skies. A human parallel emerges everywhere we look. Our own days bend around certain masses, commitments, people we love, the work that anchors us. We return to certain orbits because the terrain of meaning is curved there. To imagine life on a flat, edgeless plane with no hollows is to imagine a day without preference, a story without plot. Gravity's quiet curves say it's all right to have centers. It's all right to circle them with grace. The trick is to let those orbits be chosen rather than compelled, felt rather than feared. If a stray practical thought comes, will gravity change? The bedtime answer is patience. The rules we know are steady on human scales. Mountains keep their positions with respect to valleys, seas hold to their basins. Your cup, if tipped, will arc and spill the same way tomorrow. The grand experiments that refined these ideas live in quiet labs and stiller deserts. We can appreciate their courage without needing to stay awake for their details. It is enough to know the world is shaped, and that shape is kind. Let your senses mark a few anchors. The weight of your legs, the way the bed receives them differently at knee and heel, the slight compression where your shoulder meets the mattress, and the relief just past it where muscle floats. Notice the small arcs your breath draws at the top of each inhale and the bottom of each exhale, a curve in time rather than space, but a curve nonetheless. Your body honors shapes it learned without needing to name them. Sleep belongs to that family of motions. Before we close, hold one last image. A quiet roadway curving around a hill at dusk. The guardrail follows the bend, reflective markers appearing one by one in your headlights, each an invitation to continue smoothly. You do not feel forced. You feel guided. Behind the hill, a town glows with small domestic lights. Above it, stars keep their measured arcs, the long sweep of the planet's own rotation, moving them along the dome. Curves upon curves, nested, harmonious, unhurried. We'll let that harmony carry us into wider spaces next, adrift through islands and filaments, and the tender openness of voids, the large-scale texture that grew from the earliest ripples and the quiet scaffolding you can't see. For now, let gravity's gentle handwriting across the night reassure you. You live inside a story with lines that flow, with turns that are expected, with paths that widen into rest. Follow the curve you're on, and sleep. There's a comfort that comes with maps at night, the way a finger can follow a road's thin line without ever leaving the warmth of the blanket. Tonight we're going to trace such lines across the universe. Not highways, but filaments. Not towns, but clusters and groups. Not prairies, but quiet, generous voids that hold the whole composition together. We'll wander the large-scale texture of everything, feeling how the earliest ripples we met before grew into the web that cradles the galaxies, like fireflies strung along country lanes. Step into the cool again, even if only in imagination. The air outside is steady, and the dark has a soft granularity, like velvet, not ink. Overhead, the sky looks scattered at first, points here and there, a faint river of the Milky Way, if the night is kind. But if you could lift, climb, rise beyond our home spiral, and keep going, the pattern would change. Galaxies, which seem isolated from down here, gather themselves into families, groups and clusters, then link by narrow bridges of galaxies and gas, forming a cosmic lace you could trace with a fingertip. Between those threads lie broad basins of emptiness, the voids, quiet fields that make the web more web-like by being gently, faithfully bare. The story begins softly, as most of our stories have, tiny initial wrinkles, minuscule over and under densities, grew under gravity's patient hand. Where there was a fraction more matter, more gathered. Where there was a fraction less, less remained. The rich grew richer, not by greed, but by geometry, and filaments braided themselves along the paths where matter streamed together, like meltwater seeking valleys. The result is a network that looks almost hand-drawn, nodes where the lines cross, clusters where thousands of galaxies share a common gravity, threads stretching between, and then the tender hush of the in-between. Imagine a night train crossing plains. Towns appear at intervals, warm constellations of windows and street lamps, then long stretches of darkness where fields and wetlands lie quiet under starlight. From the train car, it might seem like emptiness punctuated by life. From the sky, it is a pattern, necessary dark between necessary bright, each granting the other meaning. The universe, on its largest scales, travels by similar rhythm, clusters as towns, filaments as connecting roads, voids as the restful acreage that keeps everything from crowding. If you like pictures, hold this one, a handful of soap bubbles pressing together. Where the spheres meet, films thicken into edges. Where several edges meet, knots form. The galaxies really. The families of galaxies collect along the edges. The knots are clusters. The interiors of the bubbles are voids. It is a quiet geometry, an economy of placement. Nothing feels wasted. Even the emptiness has a function. Relief, contrast, room for the bright to be bright without becoming glare. Closer to home, our Milky Way is not a lone island on a blank sea. We live in a small neighborhood called the local group, a few dozen galaxies at least, with two main spirals, our own and Andromeda, and smaller companions orbiting like patient boats in a tide. Our local group belongs to a larger gathering, a loose, graceful structure often mapped as part of a supercluster complex. From our modest street corner, we look out along one filament and then another, like a traveler considering which country road to take at dusk. These arrangements evolve, but they do so with church bell slowness. Clusters can merge, groups can fall along filaments into richer nodes, voids can drain a little more, becoming emptier with time. None of it troubles a single human night. The velocities and distances are too large for anxiety and too measured for drama. It is a choreography, not a chase. There's a tenderness hidden in the way filaments behave. They are not solid spines, but streams, long, faint rivers of galaxies and gas threaded by the invisible mass we've already learned to trust. They guide, they connect, they ferry. If you stood at one node and watched with a patience beyond centuries, you would see slow caravans of galaxies drifting along the thread toward the crossing, as if the universe had penciled arrows pointing the way. The motion is guided not by orders, but by the cumulative suggestion of gravity's gentle slopes, the kind that require no rush because time itself is the road. Voids deserve a lullaby of their own. They are not absolute vacuums. They are simply sparsely furnished rooms, regions where galaxies are few, where the average density is lower than the cosmic mean. Their emptiness is not neglect. It is a gift of balance. In the human world, we've learned that rooms need open space as much as furniture. If every corner held a chair, every wall a shelf, there would be no place for the eye to rest. For movement to be graceful, the universe knows interior design. It keeps generous clearings, and in those clearings subtle things happen, whispers of faint dwarf galaxies, thin streams of gas, lone travelers crossing a great quiet to find a home. You might ask softly, how do we know the web is there? The answer is the same patient suite of ear tricks we've used all along. We map where galaxies gather. We weigh the invisible through its lensing of light. We trace the glow of thin, hot gas spanning between clusters. We listen to the statistical rhythm in how galaxies prefer certain distances to others, as if the universe had laid down a faint grid long ago. Each method hums the same tune, a filamentary texture that becomes more obvious the farther out and the wider we look. There is a chronology that rocks us gently. First, the universe's afterglow marks the starting pattern. Those tiny ripples we felt 2 chapters back. Then matter follows the faint invitations, knots forming where threads cross. Stars light in those knots, gas cools in those bowls, feedback from their births and deaths stirs the broth, and the structures settle toward a rugged grace. Over late time, the wide spaces widen further, and the filaments grow thinner in contrast to their dense, glowing cities. But the overall sketch, lanes and islands, crossings and clearings, persists like a melody you can still hum decades after you first learned it. If the mind wants a human echo to carry to bed, it could be this. We too live in webs. Our friendships trace filaments across years. Our families are clusters, sometimes messy, always gravitational. The calendars between commitments are voids, where recovery happens, where creativity takes its first tentative breath. When we crowd every space with obligation, we lose the relief that voids provide. The cosmos models a kinder arrangement. Let some rooms be empty, let some roads be long and lightly travelled, let some crossings be bright with reunions. There's another comfort in how the web honours scale. Up close within a cluster, the details teem galaxies, interacting, curving, sometimes brushing past and stirring each other's gas into new stars. Step back, and details dissolve into a clean diagram. Step farther still, and even the diagram melts into a wash of near uniformity. The world is busy and simple at once, depending on where you stand. You are allowed to choose your distance. On a night like this, distance is permission. You don't have to hold the whole tangle. You can let it blur to the level that calms you. Let's take a slow walk through an imagined filament. The path is not a beam, but a broad lane, lined at intervals with small towns of light. Between towns the road narrows, the stars thin, the air grows still. You can hear your own footsteps. Then nothing at all for a while. No engine, no dog, just the soft chorus of insects like the universe's smallest choir. At the next town the windows glow again, and a river of pale cloud crosses the sky, the Milky Way seen edge on from some far vantage. You don't need to arrive anywhere. The walking is enough. The road knows where it goes. The voids too can be walked. Picture stepping off the lane and into a meadow that seems to go on. The grass is low and silvered at the tips by dew. Far away, a single farmhouse window is lit. The quiet is so complete that your body changes key to match it. That is what voids do on the map of everything. They change the key, lower the tempo, give the bright places a frame. Without them, the music would lose its phrasing. With them, the composition breathes. A small, reassuring caveat before we close. These structures are not perfect lattices. The web is lumpy, asymmetrical, varied in rich, disorderly ways. That irregularity is part of its beauty and part of its truth. The pattern is not imposed, it emerges. Emergence is a bedtime word. It absolves us from directing, from striving to arrange every piece. It suggests that given enough time and a few simple rules, harmony appears where there was only possibility. Allow your senses to settle into their own web now. Anchor at 3 nodes. The pillow under the temple, the weight at the heels, the easy warmth, where breath pools at the base of the throat. Let the rest be filament, gentle connections you don't have to trace. Around those let there be void, spaciousness you don't have to fill. This is how bodies sleep, how minds mend, clusters of attention held by long stretches of nothing in particular. We'll carry this map into our final chapter, where limits become comforts and wonder learns to rest without striving. gathering all we've touched into one slow exhale. For now, keep the image of lantern roads and open fields. Let the towns dim behind you, one by one. Let the road become a thread, the thread a thought, the thought a hush. And in that hush, let the universe's largest pattern do what it does best. Cradle the little lights and cradle you. There is a moment before sleep when the room feels perfectly sized, not too large to echo your thoughts, not too small to crowd them. The blanket knows your shape. The air finds its level. In that balance, we can hold one last truth together, the kind that closes a circle without tightening it, the comfort of limits, and the roomy kind of wonder that begins exactly where knowledge rests its head. Let the night be ordinary for a breath, a faint hum somewhere, a neighbour's door catching softly, the thinnest breeze along a window seam. You know the distance from lamp to shelf with your eyes closed. You could reach for a glass in the dark and find it on the first try. Limits here are not fences. They are the friendly edges that let the room be a room. The universe outsized beyond speech turns out to be like this too. It gives us a horizon, not as a warning, but as a frame. It sends ancient light on patient roads, not as a test, but as a story told at the pace of breath. We have walked gently across 10 years of time tonight. We listened to starlight, letters arriving late, and perfectly on time. We let the observable world be a soft bubble that grows as nights pass. We leaned into the oldest afterglow, the everywhere hush that holds faint ripples like seeds. We felt space widen between lanterns without asking the lanterns to move. We imagined shapes without edges, hallways that loop into familiarity. We traced the hidden scaffolding that steadies galaxies, and the ambient kindness that opens the wide between. We soothed the old paradox of the dark sky. We rested a hand on gravity's slow script, curves that guide rather than command. We wandered the web of islands and roads and quiet fields, learning that emptiness is not an absence but a design. Now comes the gathering breath, the one you didn't have to plan. It arrives on its own, fuller than the last, and it leaves on its own, slower than the one before. In that breath, let's lie down beside the idea that knowing enough is enough. The mind loves to lean forward, to press its ear to the next door. But there is mercy in pausing on this side, where the tea is warm and the night is mild, where questions can drowse without going out. Consider the small consolations we've learned to trust. The speed of light, steady as a heartbeat, turns distance into time with a kindness that keeps the sky from shouting. The horizon, a soft shoreline of information, grows with us like a child's reach lengthening. The background glow, cooled into a murmur, remembers the earliest brightness without insisting we relive it. Expansion gives the distant lights a lullaby tempo. Curvature, if it exists, is so broad it becomes a comforter rather than a cage. Hidden matter keeps the spinning worlds from flying apart. Hidden openness in the empty places lets the largest story breathe. Voids are blankets of quiet stretched between bright towns. Each of these is a limit written as a kindness. There is a way to hold wonder that doesn't flutter the nerves. It's not the kind that stands on tiptoe at the cliff edge. It is the kind that sits with its back to a tree and watches clouds traffic slowly between branches. It says perhaps more than therefore, it says might be more than must. It treats mystery not as a hunger to be sated, but as a cool stream to trail the fingers in, turning the wrist to feel the current, letting it pass. This is a late night wonder, a bedside wonder, the sort that leaves you heavier on the mattress, not lighter. A gentle chronology of a human day can mirror the cosmic one. We begin bright mixed with others, jostling like photons in a crowded noon. We cool. We find translucence, the moment when what was noisy becomes clear. We gather into shapes, habits, friendships, work that holds us. We learn which scaffolds to trust and which rooms need widening. We discover how darkness works, too. Not a trap, but a relief, a place where meaning separates from glare. We accept the curves that keep us circling what matters. And at last, we take our place in a map larger than we need to hold, with roads enough for our feet and fields enough for our rest. You might ask quietly, the way one asks a friend at the end of a long walk, what remains unknown? Quite a lot. And it is a blessing. The labels we use for the unseen are placeholders, and that's all right. The exact shape of the whole may be flatter, rounder, or more cunningly connected than our current picture. The background may still hide notes we haven't learned to hear. The web may hold subtleties we'll only notice when we stand farther back. But none of this is required for tonight. The universe is generous with its pace. It allows us a lifetime of partial understanding and still makes the sky familiar. Let us ground that with touch. The bowl of the palm warmer than the room, the length of the forearm easing into the mattress, a small relief under the elbow, the weight of the head not heavy, just sure. Your breath making a quiet microclimate near your collarbone. These are local truths. They don't contradict the grand ones. They fulfill them. The same geometry that guides galaxies makes your cup roll toward the center of the table. The same patience that carried the cosmic afterglow across the ages carries you through an hour of sleep. The same acceptance of limits that keeps the night sky from blinding you allows your day to end. If you need an image to keep, try this. A lighthouse on a low coast. Midnight tide in the lantern turns slow, unhurried, laying a stripe of light over black water. Between sweeps, the dark is complete and kind. Gulls sleep in a row on the breakwater. The keeper's house breathes from its chimneys. You can hear maybe the hinge of the light rotating, soft metal well oiled. It is a system built on limits, a fixed height, a set rotation, a beam that reaches so far and no farther. And yet, within those limits, it becomes a gift to every sailor in sight. The cosmos is a lighthouse like that, turning its slow lantern of facts, light that is not frantic, darkness that is not a threat, guidance at a human rhythm, a small assurance about endings. The day ends, it does not declare itself concluded with trumpets. The episode, the chapter, the season, each has its own soft punctuation, ellipses rather than periods, commas rather than locks. The universe offers the same punctuation at scale. Horizons are ellipses. Look-back time is a comma. Even black holes, those deepest curves, are not exclamations clawed into the page, but parentheses around regions where the story proceeds by different grammar. You are allowed to end today with a breath, not a verdict. If a worry presses a thumbnail against your thoughts about tomorrow, about someone you love, about a world so large it can feel impersonal, set it gently on a star you've chosen tonight. We did this once already. It worked then, it can work again. Let the worry wait for its light to arrive. Put time between you and it, the way space puts time between lanterns. Watch how even stubborn thoughts lose brightness with distance, how their color drifts to a warmer hue, how they become part of the background, a hum you can live with, a hush you can sleep in. Before we close, let's gather our metaphors, like shells on a low table, and see how they shine together. A river for time, a sail for expansion, a quilt for shape, a book spine for the hidden scaffold, a cathedral for openness, a meadow of fireflies for the paradox of the dark sky, a curved road for gravity, a country map of lantern roads, and open fields for the cosmic web. None of these needs to be exact. Each is a bridge from bigness to ease, a way to walk across the scale and arrive at your own body ready to rest. Now, let the room return. The pillow knows the plan. The air near the floor is a little cooler than the air above the bed. If there is a curtain, it moves on its hinge of night wind, so slightly that you feel it more than you see it. Far away, a car passes. Somewhere closer, something clicks into quiet. We have reached the part of the story where the narrator says less, and the listener drifts more. The facts are still here, but they have softened into a shore you're already lying on. Tonight, the universe has been a teacher with a soft voice, one who writes on the board in big, rounded letters and leaves the chalk dust in gentle drifts. It reminds us that boundaries can be kind, that mysteries can rest alongside what we know, that smallness can be an honest blessing. We do not need the keys to every door. We need only the one that opens this room, this breath, this sleep. So here is the closing refrain, quiet enough to follow you into dreams. The night is a time machine, and patience is built into the light. Our bubble of seeing is a cradle, not a cage. An ancient afterglow hums through every window and field. Space widens softly, leaving neighborhoods intact. Shapes need no edges to be whole. Hidden frameworks hold, hidden spaciousness. Welcome's darkness is not neglect, it is design. Gravity writes in curves and sings in distant bells. The universe is a web of islands with kindly empty rooms between. And we are allowed to know enough, to wonder more, and to rest. Everything you need to carry will be here when morning asks for it. Everything you don't need can stay with the stars a while longer. Sleep now, held by limits that love you free in the wide room of wonder.